he's on the front line, not on the front line with first responders and doctors and nurses, and we all have a healthy respect for them. But Rob Glass is on the front line right now with student athletes, communicating with them about what they can do to stay ready when I'm not going to say if, when we do get back to some form of normalcy. Rob joins us now. He's an assistant athletic director for Speed, Strength, and Conditioning. Rob, I know you've had a tough job in this, and that trying to get the word out to however many different athletes that are in different situations. But good morning, and how are you doing?
Well, doing good. Thanks for having me on, Robert. It's always good to be with you guys.
Well, I did. I communicated with you kind of the first weekend that we were involved in this, because I had started to read some things regarding, your job, the professionals that are in your business, and how difficult this thing might become with the social distancing, the isolating, the quarantining, and all the students scattering off campus. And then when they came out and said you can't use your facilities at all, that's God, you think of the great facilities that you guys have, and I'm privileged enough to occasionally walk through there and see your staff with the athletes doing the work in there, and to think those things are empty and not being used right now is a shame. But what is the situation? What are you and your staff trying to do with particularly the football athletes that you're communicating with?
Well, kind of like when we talked a few days ago, it's really a very fluid situation. Kind of when we think we have a grasp on kind of what kind of programs we can send to the guys or all athletes with all teams in general, then their situation changes from just maybe, gatherings of 10 or less to now shelter in place. So we've really had to kind of create 5 different types of workouts for our athletes, and try to get those, depending on their situation. Everybody's situation is unique. Try to create a program designed for them and kind of what they need and kind of where they're at in the calendar year, depending on their sport. So with football, right now we're just trying to maintain a fitness level is the biggest thing. We're going to take some hits in peak strength just because they've been away from the ability to handle bigger weights in their central nervous system. We'll see some regression there. But big thing for us is just trying to keep them active, working on things they can in a confined space. So as I said, it's very fluid, so there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of communication going back and forth. It's actually caused me to become much more efficient in the technology area, trying to get a lot of things done. But it's very fluid, and we're just trying to do the best we can.
I think sometimes, I know this, between Coach Gundy, the other coaches on the staff, the athletes that have passed through here at Oklahoma State, I don't think there's ever been a shortage of appreciation for what you and your staff have done. I mean, Coach Gundy says it's the most important hire he ever made. You see where Oklahoma State football is now compared to where it was, 15, 16 years ago. There's no doubt the difference. But when you look at this in your career, and figuring this is going to extend for a time being, is this maybe one of the greatest challenges for you and your staff that you've ever seen?
I think without a doubt, for sure, that would be correct. And in a lot of facets, really, like I kind of hit on just the technology side. So somebody my age trying to get up to date on Zoom and all the different mechanisms you have to communicate and do those things. But it also just with the unknown, we're not knowing, when we're going to be able to fire back up and what level that will be. So you have to be able to adapt. Communication's key. And then really the big thing that we're really faced with right now, which Dr. Ivan and I have communicated quite a bit on, we have to be very cognizant of not pushing our athletes to feel like they need to do something and compromise family members. So it's very important that we stay fit, we do what we need to do, but we don't want to feel that we're putting undue pressure on the athletes that they feel like they need to go somewhere and potentially expose themselves and bring something back in-house. So it's a little bit of a balancing act right now, but we're trying to be cognizant of that, and we're trying to find things we can have our athletes and the football players do that they can do by themselves in an isolated situation. But without a doubt, it's challenging. The big thing for me, I kind of wheel back when I started in this profession 35 years ago. I only had 30 guys in the summer anyway here at Oklahoma State for summer training. All of it was done off-site. Communication was different at that time, but we were able to work through it then, and we'll be able to work through it through this challenge. But the big thing is just getting this thing suppressed and trying to get back to some form of normalcy.
Yeah, and before I go back into the strength and the athletic part of it, just playing off your last answer there, the end of your last answer, you're around Dr. Ivan, you're around the medical staff, and like I said, I've been ultra positive through all this until the last 24 hours when you see Wimbledon being canceled for the first time since World War II. They're talking about the Open Championship in golf being canceled. That could come today. I read some of the material that I read today from the athletic directors, some of the things Jamie Pollard's doing at Iowa State, some of the comments from the athletic director at the University of Texas, Chris Del Conte. And we all know, if anybody is built to weather a storm like this, you would think it would be Texas, because Dave Hunziker likes to kid around that they print money down there in the basement in Austin. But Del Conte is talking about, this will be a big hit for Texas and will change the way they do business. And to read that, they're one of the financial giants in college sports. So when you add all that together, and the people you're in touch with, how positive are you that you think will get a chance to have a football season for next year?
Well, I try to stay optimistic. I think at some point in time, there'll be some form of football, whether the dates are traditional, true to form that we're used to, or whether there's an adjustment or whatever it may be. I know that football and the revenue pretty much drive college athletics and trickle down to every sport. So that's the lifeblood of college athletics across the board. So I know that the powers that be, the guys that are much smarter than me, will find a way to try to have some form of football. Like I said, maybe the dates change, maybe it's spring, who knows? Could be anything, but I think that they recognize that has to try to happen as best we can.
No, I agree, and I'm one of those that, and I think you're probably in the same boat. If they told me the games were at 1 a.m. on, Thursday morning overnight, I'd be there. I'd adjust my schedule and be there with bells on. It doesn't really matter when you love what you do, and I know you love what you do. I love what I do, and I love seeing those kids do what they do. So we'll make it fit. All right, getting back to the nuts and bolts of this, I told you when we talked that first time, I remember growing up, my dad had his military calisthenics manual that he kept from World War II, and his workout program every morning was based on that manual. There were no weights. There were no, it was just body weight and exercises and calisthenics. And so in some ways, with the guys that maybe don't have access to much, are you taking this back to, I don't want to say Neanderthal days, but you're taking conditioning and all of those things back a few decades at least?
Well, we have recalled a little bit. I will be honest with you that some of the older programs, we've had to kind of go back and take a look at those and what we can utilize. But as I said, it kind of goes back to what they have access to. Some of our guys were able to get to their high schools, to the field. Now those have been closed. So, but yes, there's a lot more body weight movement, body weight fitness programs going on right now.
Well, and this may not surprise you. I saw the video of Trey Sterling's dad put it up, and they have free weights in their garage. I think a lot of these guys probably. I mean, I have free weights in my garage. If some neighbor kid wanted to use it, I'd stay inside and let him use it. But it's funny in talking to some of the recruits that I've talked to. Seems like a lot of them have people next door or in their basement with gyms. They're finding ways to get to the free weights.
Right, and we like that, but at the same time, that's kind of what I had hit on a little bit earlier with Dr. Ivan. We want to be careful that we're not crossing over into an area that could compromise, them or a family member. So, that's why I say it's a balancing act. You got to be careful there and with what you're trying to encourage and trying to get it done at this time. I don't have any doubt and faith in our staff and what we do here that once we're able to fire the machine back up, we'll be ready to go and have the kids primed for elite competition. But right now we don't want to be a little overzealous and put them in a position that may compromise something long term.
Finishing up with Rob Glass, who is in charge of speed, strength, conditioning, and that facet of the athletic department at Oklahoma State, does a terrific job. And how many? I mean, with all the sports, how many different strength coaches do you have total on staff?
Well, we full time. We have 11.
Okay.
And then we utilize some graduate assistants as well. So our staff totals about 17.
And you're dealing with roughly 500 athletes. So, I mean, obviously the guys and gals that had certain sports, those are divvied up. But have you had to kind of maneuver and have some people I know have multiple sports, but just try to kind of balance this out because you have a lot of athletes to communicate with?
We do, and that's why for me, I've spent more time on the phone and FaceTiming and those things as well as our whole staff. So we're spending a lot more time in the communication phase, just trying to identify what they have the capability to utilize and what they've been doing, and trying to check in and make sure everything's going according to plan.
Last thing with Rob, and I wanted him to repeat this. This is something he and I had talked about a couple of weeks ago when we first hooked up on this topic. It wasn't even a question. It was a statement on your part. You said, Robert, if I was going to have to do this with a team, talking football, particularly here, 120 some odd athletes, but if I was going to have to do this with a team, this is the year. This is the team that gives me a chance, my staff a chance, to keep them at a good level and do this because of a lot of experience and a lot of good character and disciplined kids that you're dealing with. So kind of explain that and your feeling about this group having a chance to maybe conquer this obstacle in front of them.
Well, I think as we had that discussion, teams vary from year to year, their physical maturity, average age, all of those things, or they move from year to year. But for us, we've got about 24 seniors. It's a very physically mature group. Our strength levels are on the high end. Those are somewhat cyclical as well, depending on the maturity and the time we've had to work with kids. So if they had to have an extended period of time away, we're always in the developmental phase with our kids. We're pretty much a developmental program in general. But for us, we're maturity-wise, we're on the high side. So that being said, if they do have to have some extended time away, we're a little bit more physically mature. Our strength levels, when we finish the winter program, we're at a very high level. So it's not like you're trying to develop a bunch of redshirt freshmen and you need this time. We always need the time, but we're in a little bit better position just as we talked about from a physical maturity perspective, and then also just from our kids and where they're at and how they understand the importance of taking care of their bodies.
Now, again, Rob, I appreciate your time, and I know you and your staff are really busy during this, and I'm an optimist too, even though I've read a lot of sobering stuff today. I tell you what got me as much as anything is The Ohio State University already saying they're going to be online only this summer, and I'm like, wow, that to me seems pretty early to make that decision. But even with all the things I'm hearing, I'm an optimist, so I'm going to stick with you in that regard.
I hear you. We'll get through this.
All right, Rob, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, Rob Glass, Assistant Athletic Director at Oklahoma State.